a very good relationship with Iran right now, as hard as it is to believe. And I think it's a combination of about 4 weeks of bombing and a very powerful blockade. The blockade is maybe more powerful than the bombing, if you want to know.
Something remarkable happened in Congress this week that most people missed because it was buried under the usual noise of committee hearings and partisan back and forth.
Of American small businesses, including restaurants, dry cleaners, corner stores. What is a corner store? I've never heard that term. I know what a corner store is, but I've never heard it described, a corner store. Who the hell wrote that, please? And more.
Democrats effectively hijacked a congressional hearing involving RFK Jr., the current Secretary of Health and Human Services, and turned it into a sustained.
In addition to no tax on Social Security, over 51 million seniors now pay. Seniors are loving me, and I love them. Of course, I'm not a senior, so I cater to the seniors, but I don't happen to be a senior myself. Thank you very much.
On the record cross-examination about the 25th Amendment and whether the cabinet has a constitutional duty to assess the president's mental fitness. And what made it significant wasn't just the questions. It was the answers, or more precisely.
Days later, on April 7th, President Trump put out a statement that said, quote, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will," end quote. Mr. Secretary, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States military is calling for the eradication of an entire civilization. And 5 days later, the president started posting on Truth Social at 9 p.m. at night, continuing until 5 a.m. the next morning, and included an unhinged attack on Pope Leo, claiming Pope Leo was weak on crime. And then, later that day, the next day, President Trump posted this image of himself as Jesus Christ. Mr. Secretary, people across the country and around the world were deeply offended by this blasphemous image. Millions of Americans are questioning this president's mental fitness, his emotional stability, and whether he can carry out the duties of his office. Do you share their concerns about his mental health?
I want to call your attention to the last line of that.
Mr. Secretary, my question was, do you share their concerns about his mental health?
I want to call your attention.
Mr. Secretary, you're not being responsive. Apparently not reclaiming my time, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Secretary, reclaiming my time. Mr. Chairman, direct the witness. It's my time, Mr. Secretary. You're not being responsive, and apparently you don't share their concerns. We are a nation at war, Mr. Secretary. We need a commander-in-chief that we know has full command of his mental faculties and is emotionally stable as he sends uniformed American men and women into harm's way. Millions of Americans are now wondering if this president is delusional and thinks he is Jesus Christ. Mr. Secretary, given everything that I've shown you today, will you insist that President Trump undergo an assessment of his mental fitness and his emotional stability?
Absolutely not.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Reclaiming my time so absolutely not. I remind you that under the 25th Amendment, you have a duty to remove a president who is physically or mentally unable to discharge his responsibilities under the Constitution. It's your duty. You took an oath to the Constitution, not to President Trump.
The refusal to answer, and what that refusal reveals about the people closest to this president and the choices they're making about loyalty versus constitutional obligation. Let me walk you through what actually happened in that hearing room, because the specific exchanges deserve to be heard in full context. Congressman Mark Takano laid out a timeline of Trump's public behavior over the preceding days. He cited the president's Easter Sunday Truth Social post, which included profanity directed at Iran and a threat to destroy an entire civilization. He cited the fact that Trump posted continuously from 9 p.m. one night until 5 a.m. the next morning, including an attack on Pope Leo that called the Pope weak on crime. He cited the AI-generated image Trump posted depicting himself as Jesus Christ, which generated bipartisan outrage and caused prominent MAGA supporters to publicly withdraw their support. By the way, please leave your questions or comments in the comments section. I will answer each one individually as time permits. Also, I would be very happy if you liked the video and subscribe to my channel. Now, let's continue. Then Takano turned to RFK Jr. and asked a direct question. Mr. Secretary, millions of Americans are questioning this president's mental fitness, his emotional stability, and whether he can carry out the duties of his office. Do you share their concerns about his mental health? RFK Jr. attempted to redirect. Takano cut him off. Mr. Secretary, you're not being responsive. Apparently, you don't share their concerns. We are a nation at war. We need a commander-in-chief that we know has full command of his mental faculties and is emotionally stable as he sends uniformed American men and women into harm's way. Millions of Americans are now wondering if this president is delusional and thinks he is Jesus Christ. Mr. Secretary, will you insist that President Trump undergo an assessment of his mental fitness and emotional stability? RFK Jr.'s answer was 2 words. Absolutely not. Takano then reminded him of his constitutional obligation. Under the 25th Amendment, you have a duty to remove a president who is physically or mentally unable to discharge his responsibilities under the Constitution. It's your duty. You took an oath to the Constitution, not to President Trump. He pressed further. Should President Trump fail a mental fitness test, would you vote to invoke the 25th Amendment? RFK Jr. began to answer with praise for Trump. Takano reclaimed his time. The exchange ended with Takano stating directly into the record, "We can all see that this president is mentally unstable, emotionally unstable, and is unfit to lead this country. You as the nation's top health official have a particular role here, and you are choosing your loyalty to Donald Trump over your loyalty to the Constitution." A second congressman pursued the same line of questioning, citing Trump's Easter morning post where the president used profanity in a public message seen by millions of people and asked whether this raised concerns about the president's mental health. RFK Jr.'s response was that the president is a bargainer and knows how to make deals. The congressman noted that RFK Jr. was being non-responsive and moved on. Then came the moment that Republican members clearly hadn't anticipated. When MAGA allies on the committee tried to rehabilitate RFK Jr. by giving him a chance to explain Trump's behavior in a favorable light, RFK Jr. argued that when Trump threatened to end Iranian civilization, it was actually a nuanced message. He said Trump was sending a message of brute force and violence to the mullahs to incentivize them to change, but also sending a message of love and compassion to the Iranian people. He described Trump as a deal-maker, a bargainer, and declared him very sane. And then RFK Jr. left the hearing. He stood up, said he needed to step out, and walked away while a congresswoman was still making her opening statements. The nation's top health official, asked under oath about the president's mental fitness during an act of war, refused to engage with the question and physically removed himself from the room rather than continue the conversation. That sequence of events, the direct questions, the refusal to answer, the constitutional reminder about the 25th Amendment, and the walkout, is now part of the official congressional record. It cannot be erased or reframed, and it establishes something that will matter enormously going forward. Every cabinet member has now been publicly confronted with their constitutional obligation under the 25th Amendment, and their responses are documented. Now let me connect this to the broader pattern of behavior that prompted these questions, because it's important to separate partisan rhetoric from observable reality. Over the past several weeks, Trump has posted on Truth Social continuously through the night on multiple occasions, sometimes from 9 p.m. until 5 a.m. He threatened to eradicate an entire civilization. He posted an image depicting himself as Jesus Christ, then claimed he thought it showed him as a Red Cross doctor. He told an audience he is not a senior citizen despite being 79 years old. He claimed that during the State of the Union, Democrats began applauding for him because word was passed to them that he was killing it, a characterization that does not match any available footage or reporting from that evening. He claimed to have settled a war that would have killed 30 to 50 million people, referencing India and Pakistan. He said the world was laughing at America a year ago, which was during his own presidency. Each of these individually might be dismissed as Trump being Trump. Taken together, they describe a pattern that multiple medical professionals have publicly characterized as consistent with cognitive decline. Dr. John Gartner, a clinical psychologist, stated that Trump is showing signs of dementia and that the nature of dementia is that it doesn't get better, it doesn't stay the same, it gets worse, and the rate of decline accelerates. He specifically referenced frontal temporal dementia, where the frontal lobes, the part of the brain that provides judgment and impulse control, deteriorate. That deterioration would manifest as increasingly erratic behavior, loss of inhibition, impulsive aggression, and self-destructive public statements, which is precisely what multiple observers across the political spectrum are noting. Columbia University professor Jeffrey Sachs offered a similar assessment, describing Trump as psychopathic, impulsive, paranoid, and megalomaniacal, and stating that this is not the kind of person one wants in the presidency of the United States. He added that Trump may also be showing symptoms of frontal temporal dementia on top of his baseline personality characteristics, meaning the loss of impulse control is accelerating beyond what was already an extreme baseline. The 25th Amendment exists for exactly this kind of scenario. It was ratified in 1967 specifically to address the situation where a president becomes unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. It authorizes the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to make that determination and act on it. Nobody is suggesting that invocation is likely in the current political environment. The cabinet is populated by Trump loyalists whose careers depend on his continued presidency. But the hearing this week accomplished something important regardless. It put every cabinet member on notice, on the record, that Congress is watching, that the constitutional framework for removal exists, and that the questions about the president's fitness are no longer confined to opposition commentary. They are now part of formal congressional proceedings. And the timing matters. This is happening during an active war where the stakes of presidential decision-making could not be higher. American service members are deployed across the Persian Gulf. A ceasefire is in place that could collapse at any moment. Negotiations are underway in Pakistan with J.D. Vance leading talks he privately opposed, according to White House officials. The Strait of Hormuz remains under Iranian control, with a toll system collecting Chinese yuan from every vessel that passes. Oil is above $110 a barrel. Gas is above $4 a gallon nationally. The global economy is absorbing what the IEA called the greatest energy security challenge in history. And the president is publicly claiming a great relationship with Iran while Iranian state media mocks him for saying it. He is claiming the strait is open while it remains under Iranian control, with a formalized toll system being written into Iranian law. He is claiming military objectives have been met and exceeded while the primary strategic objective, reopening the strait, has not been achieved. He is threatening further escalation while his own senior officers privately describe a ground invasion as an absolute disaster. And the man making all of these decisions, the commander-in-chief sending American troops into harm's way, the person whose judgment determines whether the ceasefire holds or a ground war begins, is the same man posting AI images of himself as Jesus at 2 in the morning, telling audiences he saved 50 million lives, claiming he's not a senior citizen at 79, and insisting that Democrats were clapping for him during the State of the Union when no available evidence supports that claim. The question the congressional hearing raised isn't whether Trump's behavior is unusual. Everyone can see that it is. The question is whether the people with the constitutional authority to act on that observation will do so, or whether they will continue to choose loyalty to one man over their oath to the Constitution. RFK Jr. gave his answer this week. Absolutely not. And then he walked out of the room. The 25th Amendment was written for this. Whether it will ever be invoked is a political question, not a legal one. The mechanism exists. The obligation is clear. The evidence is accumulating in public view. And as of this week, the refusal of the cabinet to act on that obligation is also part of the permanent record. RFK Jr. said absolutely not and walked out of the room. That answer and that departure will be remembered alongside everything that follows.